back, everybody. I've been mentioning this lesson for a while now, and we are finally here for multi-store setup. We will discuss the various configurations involved in multi-store environments, and this should also tie together a bunch of topics that we've looked at already. All those times that I said, I know we haven't created another store yet, but we'll be doing it soon. We'll be doing that today. We'll actually be creating a couple additional stores in our database here. So there won't necessarily be an agenda for this lesson aside from the timestamps that I will have added to the screen here. So we'll just jump into back office and get started. And the first place that we should start is here in global settings. There's a few things here that are related to multi-store organizations, some that are specific to multi-venues also. I know I've mentioned before that we won't really be getting into multi-venues in this course, and I do stand by that. However, a lot of the multi-venue related settings also have multi-store implications. For example, this flag in the multi-venue section called Send All Prod Stores. I believe I mentioned this in the System Setup 101 lesson a while back, but what this does, or what the system will do if it's turned on, is it will send all prod stores. If you remember from the product lessons what a prod store is, it will send all prod stores to every venue all of the time. That means that all individual prod store pricing will be sent between stores, which is going to be very important for a topic that we will come to in just a little bit, where we can redirect pricing from one store to another. So while this particular flag is only related to multi-venues and store pricing redirections may be used more often in multi-venue organizations, pricing redirections can and certainly still are utilized in single venue multi-store environments, but more on price redirections in just a couple minutes. In the meantime, while we are here in global settings, if I head to the other names tab, there's a few database naming conventions that we can define here, which we haven't talked about yet. The first one being the store groups over here on the left. So these are something else that would be used predominantly in multi-venues to group similar store locations across the multi-venues. That can then be used to control access to stores, filter reports, etc. Basically, wherever there is a store filter that can be found, we can filter to a single store or to a store group. One example could be if I name these. So we've got stock only, bars, bistro, restaurants, and retail. We can define up to 50 of these if we do need to. We can then assign each store to one of these store groups and then be able to report on the group as one example of what we could do with groups. So even in a single venue, if we have multiple bars or multiple restaurants that are in that single venue, we can report on them as a group as well as individually. And I'll show you how these can be assigned at the store level in just a minute. But you can see a couple other store related things that we can define here. We've got the stocking store types and we have our requisition store types. Now the stocking store types should already have two defined in any new database. We'll have a general and bulk that are just shipped with the software. The concept here is similar to the printer types versus physical printers, where here at the global level we are simply defining the stocking store types. Then in organizations that have multiple stocking locations per venue, we can set the individual products to deduct their stock from a store other than a till's default store. This would be commonly used with bulk or draft beer, where a keg or a barrel dispenses to multiple locations within the venue. More on mapping these in a minute, but for now I'm going to just rename this one to bulk beverage. And I'm going to create a third one called culinary. As for the requisition store types, these are related to a stock control concept called requisitions, which we won't be getting into today. We will briefly get into them in another stock control lesson later on in the course. But the same idea here, we are simply defining the types of stores for them, which can then be assigned at the store level. But like I said, we'll get more into that another time. The main two that we will be focusing on today are going to be the store groups and the stocking store types, at least as far as global settings are concerned. Now, as far as multi-store setup at the global level, that really does cover everything, so I will click OK to save those changes. So what we'll do now, or what I'll do at least, is create some new stores and tills in this database. You may or may not need to do this in your database, or maybe you've skipped ahead and already done it in yours. Just a quick refresher from the System Setup 101 lesson. We just need to select the venue and then add new store. We'll need to select one to copy, and we obviously only have one here in this database. And I will go ahead and name this one NHNS Bistro. There we go. Now I will need to go back and update some settings in the main restaurant maintenance form, but this is where we have the store group setting that we have seen in the past, but probably wouldn't have made any sense at the time. So for our bistro here, I will set it to bistro. I will also want to turn off this waiter banking flag here, since this store will not be set up for waitering. This is our bistro. So I will just click OK to save that, and we've got our new store added here. I will just add a couple tills to this store too. So I can either select that and then go add new workstation, or I can just right click and go add workstation under. And I will just go ahead and select blank for that one. I will just leave the default name. Now we will come back to the workstation maintenance settings for the tills in the bistro lesson coming up later in the course also. But this should at least highlight for now the fact that here in the bistro, we will be able to sell the products, of course, from the database that are on the menu here. Now to do that though, if I set this to till mode for till, and we go to our till setup tab, we will need to add the store to those products, which I will demonstrate later in this lesson. But we can also design and set a different key map set to use here, different printing setups, of course, so on and so forth. Obviously, different tills in different stores will likely need different configurations. So I will just go ahead and save that one, and let's add another till. Another till here also. And for that, I will just copy that bistro till and leave that default name there, and just save that one. I'll also add another bar to the venue, or No Hats, No Stars Sports Bar. Change the store group here to bars. Just make sure that that waiter banking flag is off here. And again, we'll come back to some of these other settings later in this lesson. Some of them I'll set up on my own after this lesson, but once I explain everything to you. Now I should point out that this sports bar, this is separate from two smaller service bars that are within both the restaurant and the bistro in our make-up pretend venue here. But basically it works like this. In each of those stores, the restaurant and the bistro, they have small service bars in those that are used to stock and serve the drinks at those locations, at those stores. And then we have the sports bar here, which is basically a separate entity within the venue. And yeah, I will add some tills to our sports bar also. And for these, I will just copy the restaurant till for this. They might use the same key map, the same table map, so on and so forth there. I can, in that case, then also copy the devices. In that instance, I will just select no for that. And there we go. And I'll copy that to create another one in the sports bar. I also want to add a store to our venue here that is going to be called, and for this I will just copy the main restaurant, and it is going to be called our production kitchen and food warehouse. Oh, it cuts me off there. I can only enter production kitchen and food ware. That's okay. So basically what this will be used for is for bulk stock in the venue, as well as for food prep and some other internal stock control things that we will come to in later lessons that we'll want to have this set up for. Also this way though, when we are placing purchase orders with suppliers in the venue, we can order product just for this store and then transfer it internally to other places like the restaurant, the bistro, and the bar. I believe I've mentioned this before, I'm sure I'll mention it again, that product quantities as far as stock control is concerned belongs to stores, not to the venue. But I'll go ahead and save that. I will make sure in this case the store group is set to stock only. And we'll go ahead and save that. And I will actually add a workstation for this. And you may be wondering why. It's because we can actually use a till for stock control functions. That way operators can perform stock control tasks from that workstation without needing to access back office. So I'll just go with blank workstation for that. And I will actually name this till back of house. I'll call it back of house workstation 1. And I will just save that as is for now. Now the final store that I will add is going to be similar to this. I'm going to call it, so I will just copy that one there, and I will call this our bulk beverage store. And I'll leave the store group for that to stock only also. Now, like I said, similar idea to the production kitchen and food warehouse, but for this will be used for stocking bulk beverages like kegs of draft beer, for example. So the kegs of draft beer will live here in the bulk beverage storage store. Should call that bulk beverage storage is the store name. So those will live here in this location, and they will have their stock deducted from this store when the beer is sold, when the draft beer is sold at the bar, at the restaurant, or at the bistro. We will set that up later, how we can redirect stock that's sold from other stores to actually be deducted from this store. We don't need any tills set up for the bulk beverage store here though. It just needs to exist for stock purposes. So with these additional stores and tills all created, our multi-store venue here, no hats, no stars, is starting to come together. So we've got our main restaurant, which is used for full service dining and for takeaway. We'll get to that another time though, the takeaway portion. We've got our bistro, which is used for that type of dining environment that I had explained in the tables lesson. We will have a separate lesson for bistro service too, by the way. Then we've got our sports bar, which again is separate to both of these locations, which each have their own small service bars in them. We've got our production kitchen and food warehouse, which is used for prep and most of the bulk storage in the venue. And then finally, we have our bulk beverage storage store, which is essentially the draft beer cellar, and maybe they stock some cases of beer and wine and such there as well that can be transferred out from that store to the other locations. Cool, so what we'll do now is we will check out the venue and the store related settings. And we will look at the venue settings first because there are only a couple things here. The first is a flag in this multi-venue section. It is called Always Send All Prod Stores. Obviously this is only applicable to multi-venues, and this is closely related to the global flag regarding sending prod stores that we looked at earlier. But this one would be just for this venue, so if it is a multi-venue. So with the global flag on, we can send all prod stores to all venues all the time. Or with this flag at the venue level, we can send prod stores to this venue all the time separately, even if the global flag for sending prod stores is off. Now in a multi-venue that uses price redirections, that will be very important when we get to the store settings next and we look at price redirections. The other multi-store setting at the venue level is one that we looked at during the marketing and promotions lesson. It is here on the flags tab, and it is called promos from origin store or original store. This will be related to the store level price redirections also. So if and when we are redirecting prices, products that are in an active promotion in the original store will be on promotion in any stores that their pricing is being redirected to. Otherwise, promotions will have to be set for the store of the till where the transaction is taking place. A use case for this would be to run different promos in different stores and have the promotions move with any price redirections that are set up. There is one other venue setting that we've seen previously here on the main tab. It is this product sales store, but we will come back to that at the end of the lesson. For now, we will check out some store settings. First up is right at the top. We've seen it already, is where we can set the store group for each store. For our main restaurant here, I will want to set this to be the restaurant store group. That way, if we ever add another restaurant to our venue, let's say No Hats, No Stars goes through a growth spurt and we expand on the back of the venue, we add another restaurant, we could then have that restaurant also be in the restaurant's store group, and we would be able to do things like report on them together. Cool. With that aside, we will head to our store types tab, and we will go through these price number and price store redirections, and the stocking store type redirections, and the restocked from. All of which I've been alluding to already throughout this lesson, as I've mentioned things like price redirections and stock redirections. Now, as much as I've said previously that we'll stay away from chatting about multi-venues, these types of things that we're looking at now are inherently tied to multi-venue settings, so this is just another example. In multi-venues, those two prod store send flags that we looked at the global level and at the venue level will need to be on for price redirections that are set up in this section at the store level. But aside from multi-venues, these price redirections can still be used in single venue multi-store organizations. So let me explain a bit about this. By the way, the price names, the price numbers names that we configure on the venue maintenance names tab will autofill here for this price names column. So while it looks like we can enter our cursor in there and type, it won't actually do anything. So those are just autofilled from the names that we define at the venue level. But overall, what this section does is it allows for essentially maintaining fewer prices and also for potentially having a centralized prices in the organization. Now, one example could be that price names, so rather than how I have them configured here, these could be maintained for something like different regions. So we could have normal and then, or maybe just metropolitan, suburban, rural, something like that, where those prices can be set in one store for each region and then redirected to other stores in that region without each store's pricing needing to be maintained separately. Now that's obviously more of a large multi-venue type of scenario, but outside of that type of scenario, we could still use price redirections, certainly for bars and restaurants and smaller organizations, still to reduce price maintenance or to reduce the effort and time that needs to go into maintaining prices. For example, what we could do here in No Hats, No Stars is we could redirect prices from the restaurant to the bars, or redirect bistro pricing from the main restaurant, or vice versa. That would eliminate the need to change pricing at both stores if we change prices in the venue overall. So what I might actually do in this scenario is maintain all pricing from the main restaurant and then redirect it to the other stores. So if I'll save this so that store group setting gets saved for the main restaurant. But if I open the bistro and head to the store types tab, we could have the normal price for the bistro here, and we could have this looking at or redirected to the main restaurant normal price. Then not only will we not need to set any prices for products in the bistro, of course provided that we set the prices for the bistro's menu items in the main restaurant, but if we change the retail prices of products in the main restaurant, those changes will also be redirected to the bistro. For example, let's say we'll take our roast chicken. I think is one of the meals that we sell here in No Hats, No Stars. I should have our menu memorized, but we've got a roast chicken meal, and that's sold in both the main restaurant and the bistro. So if as a venue we decide to increase or decrease the prices of our menu items, and we change the price of our roast chicken meal, we would most likely have the price be the same in both stores. Whether we sell the price for the main restaurant and the price for the bistro, we would probably keep those in line. So with this redirection set up, we would not need to manually update the price in the bistro. We would only need to update the price in the main restaurant, and then that price would be redirected here to the bistro. I know that's a pretty simple example, but if we imagine an organization with maybe dozens or hundreds of products, that could equate to a lot of time and effort saved when maintaining prices. Now, Another option could be that we can redirect prices to a different price number altogether. For example, if I save this and we go to the sports bar, we could do something like redirect the sports bar's normal price to the restaurant's happy hour price name, for example. Then we wouldn't necessarily need to set prices for the bar as long as we maintained Prod Store's prices for that price name for all the products that are sold in both the restaurant and the sports bar. So just a different option, a different thing we can do there with price redirections is we can redirect them to different price numbers from different stores also. There's all sorts of different scenarios that we could cater for, of course, depending on the organization, depending on the stores in the organization and their product mixes or menus. Of course, if there are products that are shared between the stores, depending on the price names and how those are configured, so on and so forth. Actually, another common practice is to create a pricing store in the database where basically, I'll call it a ghost store, is added purely to be used for pricing maintenance, and other stores are then redirected to it. I won't do it here in No Hats, No Stars, but if I just save that, what we could do is we could add a store and literally just name it pricing store. Wouldn't need any tills for it. It wouldn't actually be a physical store in the venue. We could then add all the products in the database to that pricing store. We could then set prices for every product and all the different price names that we use in that pricing store, and then have every other store and its pricing redirected to that pricing store and the appropriate price name. That is how some larger multi-venues and retail chains like to control their pricing centrally, but that concept could also be used in smaller multi-venues or even in single venues like we've got here. Just keep in mind that things could get a bit complex with how all of this could be set up. As with most of the system setup configurations that we've gone through in this course, just some proper planning and consideration should be done prior to setting up these price redirections. But yeah, we can understand now why the prod store send flags would need to be on, so that stores that have their pricing redirected from another store will get that prod store information passed along to them. Cool. If I reopen the sports bar, there are a couple other multi-store related configurations that I mentioned. So for the restocked from drop down here, this is going to set the default store when we're using a till function for something called restocks. So if this is left as none, then there won't be any default store, and we can just manually select the store to restock from each time that we perform that function from the till. If it's not going to just be restocked from the store itself, we do have that option here where we could select that. But this may be set up to a central warehouse or a stocking store. So in our case for this venue, where we set up the bulk beverage storage store, we could set it to that for the sports bar, so that restocks that are performed from the till will always default to come from that bulk storage store, where we've got cases of beer and cases of wine, cases of liquor potentially being stored there, and we could by default restock from that store. Restocks can then be based on minimum and maximum stock quantities, on sales, etc. We'll get into more into those concepts during some upcoming stock control lessons, but that would make it very easy and efficient just to top up product quantities at the end of the night or end of the day or end of the week or whenever, in organizations that are structured in a similar way to what we've got here, with a stocking store or a central kitchen or a warehouse or something like that. Now we can still do manual transfers to and from different stores, and we'll get into how to do those in another lesson, in an upcoming stock control lesson. But this will be the default when we're doing restocks from tills in this store. One thing to consider when implementing this is that it does affect the overall stock control program. maybe this is a conversation for another lesson, but setting up something like this may be good or bad depending on how you look at it, to have restocks coming from another store. So, is it better to have 1 or 2 stocking locations in the venue to then place purchase orders for, and then, distribute out from there to the rest of the other stores in the venue? Or is it better to have all separate stores with their own purchase orders, receive deliveries separately, etc.? I think it's certainly easier for suppliers to have 1 store, maybe 2 stores in a large venue to deliver to, and then product can be moved around internally from there. But again, that's probably a discussion for another lesson. But speaking of all of that, that brings us to our stocking store type redirections, which would be used for scenarios, again, like what we've got set up here, where some products can be stocked at a store other than the store where it's being sold. So we could set up a redirection here where product like our draft beer that is going to be stored in the bulk beverage storage store will actually be deducted from that store when it's sold at the sports bar here. So that is going to eliminate the need for unnecessary restocks and transfers. So again, for example, since we have all of the beer kegs in our No Hats, No Stars venue in the cellar here, and we've called that cellar our bulk beverage storage, those kegs of beer will never move from there because that's just how the beer lines are physically set in the venue. We just leave the kegs, we leave the stock there, and then in the other stores we can redirect the store type to that store. In this example where we renamed the bulk store type to bulk beverage, I can set it to redirect from the bulk beverage storage. Then at the product level, which we'll get to in a few minutes, we can then set the product to have its stock deducted from the bulk beverage storage type. And since for this store, we're saying that the store type, that bulk beverage store type, is going to deduct stock from the bulk beverage storage store, then when a product, in our example a draft beer, is sold from this store, the sports bar, the stock quantity will actually be deducted from the bulk beverage storage store, not from the sports bar, because the stock won't actually exist at the sports bar. The stock exists in that storage cellar. So if I save this and we go to the main restaurant, we can set the bulk beverage store type here to the same, and we could also do something like set the culinary store type to the production kitchen and food warehouse. Then if there are any food products that are configured for that store type in their stock settings, it'll have its stock deducted from here, the production kitchen and food warehouse, not the main restaurant. So it won't need to be stocked in the main restaurant, and we won't need to transfer products around. That could be used for maybe some staple commodity type products in the venue, so something like maybe flour or oil, so that stock control and stock takes are going to be a little bit easier. We won't need to necessarily stock those products in multiple locations and won't need to transfer them around in the system. Obviously, if we do want tighter control over stock for those products, either don't set this up or just leave the store type to general for those products. We'll see that on the product at the product level on the product record in just a few minutes. So setting up something like this is optional for most products like that, but would be needed or at least strongly recommended for the keg example, for instance. All right, so we will jump to the product list now, and I will explain how all of these things that we've been looking at here, the price redirections and the stock redirections, come together. So what I want to do first is to add other stores to some products. Now that we've got all of our stores added to the database, we need to create that prod store link for all the stores that each product is going to either be sold in or stocked in or both. I will show you how to do it manually for one product first, and then I'll show you a shortcut so that we can do it for an entire product group at one time. So let's take our cocktails for example here. These are all non-stocked products, so they don't need to be added to the stocking stores, but their ingredient products will need to be. but since they are all sold at the bistro and the sports bar in addition to the main restaurant, where we already have the store set up for them, we will want to add them to those other stores so that they can be sold in those. By the way, the reason that these are showing in green in the product list here is because the bulk beverage store has been selected by default. The list is in alphabetical order, and these products do not exist yet in the bulk beverage store. They don't need to exist there because, again, that's for stocking only, and these are non-stocked products. But if I open the first one, the espresso martini here, and we go to the store tab, we can confirm from the drop-down that this still only exists in the main restaurant. So if we want to add this to other stores, we will just need to click the store button. Now, because the bulk beverage storage store is selected on the product list right now, it's active. The system and this product does not exist there. The system recognizes that, and it's going to prompt me and ask if we would like to add it to that store now. I will select no because we don't want to, but then that's going to take us to our stores list where we can maintain all of the stores for this product. We can add, delete, so on and so forth. So I'm going to click add, and then we can select the other stores that we want to add for this product. Now I'm being warned that this product has an ingredient that will need to be added to these stores also, but no worries, I will do that later. Click OK there. So now our espresso martini is added to the bistro, and it is added to our sports bar. I'll get that same notification there. I need to add the vodka that's an ingredient of this non-stocked product to these stores also. Now, this is an example of where the price redirect could be used. Since this same product is being sold in all three stores, while we could maintain separate prices for all three, and I won't switch between stores because I'm going to keep getting that prompt, but while we could maintain separate normal prices, separate accounts prices, separate happy hour prices, if we had additional price names, maintain separate prices for all those different price names in each store, we certainly could do that, and that might be necessary in some venues. But what we can do instead is we can opt to only maintain prices in one store and then have the other stores redirected to look at that store's prices. So in our example here, where I set the bistro normal price to redirect and look at the main restaurant's normal price, and set the sports bar's normal price to direct and look at the restaurant's happy hour price, I will just change this to the main restaurant. That's okay, we have the ingredient product in the main restaurant anyway. I would just need to make sure to set those prices here, so the normal price and the happy hour price, and then those will be redirected to those other stores. And in that case, we could then leave the other prod store prices alone. Now, there is a till function that can be used for temporary price level changes where things could get messy depending on how redirects are set up, but we'll get into that in another lesson when we cover scheduling, how to schedule price changes and things like that. Cool, so that's how to add a prod store manually, but what if we want to save a bit of time? You know, we've got dozens of products in this database, and we need to add all those stores that we've just created, need to add them to our products. And that seems like a very tedious task, so how can we save some time for that? If I click OK to save this, if we remember back to, I believe it was the last lesson, maybe it was a couple lessons ago, where I showed you that if we right click in the product list here, we have this component called product change by range. Well, we have a similar component to that we can use for adding prod stores, although it's not the only thing that it can be used for, but it's this one here called price copy. There's a number of options here that we can use to automatically copy prices from one store to another. We can choose to copy from different price names, we can get selective with sizes, we can configure a price mode, set it to be a percentage of the price that's being copied, etc. A few other options here. But if we do just want to quickly create prod stores, we have this flag down here and is called create product store if destination does not exist. So we can turn that on. We could also turn on this one create product store even if source does not exist, if we do need to do that, if we need to create prod stores from a source store. But yeah, just make sure that the correct product group is selected. In this case, I do want to leave this for the draft beer and cider. That was the example I was going to use anyway. And we'll need to make sure the correct from store is selected. That will be alphabetical by default. So we're going to want to copy from the main restaurant. And for our to store, we'll need to make sure the correct thing is selected here. We could go with either all stores, we could select a single store, or we can see here, this is the first place we've seen where these store groups would come into play. We could select a store group to copy to. But for our case, I do just want to do this to all stores for our draft beer and cider, because these products are going to either be sold or stocked or both in all of our stores. I believe all of our stores, or at least all of them except for the kitchen, but that's okay. I'll just set it to all stores just to speed up the process here for our demonstration. But then yeah, anything else that we want to select or alter, but I will just leave the rest. We can then preview our changes, and we'll be able to confirm here that we'll be adding these products to all of these stores, and all the prices that are going to be copied. Also, we can see them right here. If we exit that report, if we do not want to copy the prices, we can just set this percentage to 0. If we preview those changes again, we can see the prices will all be 0. But once we've got everything set there, just click OK, confirm some prompts, and there we go, done just like that. So if I close this window and we've got this product group already selected here, we can open the products from that group and we can confirm that they have been added, or that these stores have been added to the product. We can save and go next, and we can confirm that these are here also. This product actually did not previously exist for the main restaurant, so that's why that's set up for no stores there. It didn't copy from the main restaurant because it was not in the main restaurant. And we can confirm those. And we can confirm those. We can also see, by the way, that there are no prices set up for these stores because of how I had configured that price copy. But it is as simple as that. So after this lesson, I will do exactly that for all the other products in this database, for all the other stores that they need to either be sold or stocked in, or both. While we're here, if I open up one of these draft beers again and we go to the product settings tab, I will point out this store type drop down here. So again, for our draft beer that is only going to be stocked in bulk storage and not transferred to the stores where it's sold, just simply because the kegs need to live in that cold storage cellar, and then just have the beer lines to direct it to its final destination of where it's being sold, but that those kegs will only ever be stocked and stored in the bulk storage. So we would set the store type here at the product level to bulk beverage, and then we've got that stock type redirect set up at the store level. So then here at the product level, we will just need to have that set. Then for whichever store this beer is sold in, whether it's the bistro or whether it's the main restaurant, the system will not deduct the stock from that store because it won't actually exist. The stock won't exist in those stores. It will always deduct it from the store that's configured as the selling store's bulk beverage store type. And our example here at No Hats, No Stars, from the bulk beverage storage store. So I will need to set that after this lesson also for all the products that need it, but that's something that can be done quickly from the product change by range. So I'll just go ahead and save that. We are nearly done with this lesson, but there are a handful of things that I feel the need to show you still that are related to multi-store setups. First is similar to both the product change by range and the price copy components that we've seen. It is the other option that we have from right-clicking the product list, and it is store change by range. So with this, we can quickly copy or set all sorts of configurations for prod stores. If we want to just set configurations for all the products in a product group, just make sure the product group is selected from up here. And We would then leave this copy flag off. We would set whatever we want to. So if we want to set minimum quantity for all the products, turn that set flag on, and then we could enter our minimum quantity there, so on and so forth. We can select here the prod store the store that we want to set these things for. All these other options that we can set here. Set what we want, and then click OK. If we do want to copy settings from one prod store to another, we would turn this flag on, and we can then choose our from store and our to store, or we could choose multiple stores if we'd like to. Then just select. By default, everything will be selected to copy, but we can deselect things if we don't want to copy those. Notice that when we are in this copy state here, we can't actually select or change anything. We are simply selecting that we want to copy these prod store settings from one store to another store or multiple stores, but select what we'd like to copy and then click OK for that. I won't do any of that now, just wanted to show you that little shortcut for making those bulk changes to product groups, all of the products in a product group at one time for our product stores. I will just close that. Next up, as I'll sort of rapid fire through a few things here. If I head to the operator list, and I'll just open any record here, I'll find an operator group that's got someone in it. We do have some operator privileges that are related to multi-store environments. On the maintenance tab, we have our editable prices/stores, and we have our view/edit stores. So these drop downs we can use if we would like to limit or restrict an operator to being able to firstly edit prod stores for only certain product groups to begin with. So we can select the product groups there, and then using this drop down we can then limit them to only being able to view and edit certain prod stores too. So another instance where store groups could be used, we could select the store group here to limit this operator to only be able to view and edit the prod stores for that store group, or for the stores that belong in that store group, I should say. Then here on the till privileges tab, we can also limit an operator to only be allowed to use tills in a certain store, or set it to a store group so that they'll be limited to only using tills in stores that belong to that store group. We'll cancel that. A couple other places the store filter can be found. If I go into marketing and promotions, and I'll just open product promotions, and we'll just go add new promotion, is here we can filter a promotion to only be available in a particular store or for a store group. Cancel that. In many reports, so if I go, we'll open a sales report here, maybe the period summary, and in many reports we will also be able to find a store filter if we want to report on only a single store from the venue or a store group, so we can do that. And of course, back to our workstation maintenance. Actually, I'll open a different workstation for a different store. But in our workstation maintenance, don't forget that among other things, and I know I mentioned this earlier, but among other things, different tills in different stores may need to use different key maps, different function override maps, different table maps, etc. And on the printing setup tab, we'll obviously need the correct printers first created for the till, and then assigned here. And they may need to have different printer formats configured and assigned also. And lastly, I said we would come to this at the end. We'll review something that we looked at in a previous lesson in venue maintenance. It is this product sales store dropdown. So now that we've covered price and stock redirections, this should make a bit more sense. If we are using redirections in the venue, we can set this to have product sales in the venue report to either the pricing store or the stocking store instead of the tills store where the transaction is occurring, where the sale has happened. So there's a use case for either of these options that we've touched on today, and plenty of other use cases out there as well. This is ultimately one of those that will come down to, firstly, how the venue is structured, if and how redirects are being used, and just the organization's preference for product sales reporting, and if they would like product sales to report to the till store from where the product has been sold, or if pricing or stock redirects are being used to one of those. Alright, well that will be a wrap on multi-store setup. So we've seen plenty of system-wide settings here, from venue maintenance to all the store level redirection configurations and how those will affect products, and the related product settings, and a handful of other multi-store considerations and configurations here also. As always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.